Hey there, Press Starters, and welcome to a special edition of Press Start Leadership Podcast, Conversations with Christopher. On this edition, we have a special guest, a longtime friend, and former colleague in the video game industry, a TikTok D&D sensation, Jeremiah McCoy. Now, let's meet Jeremiah McCoy.
Greetings and salutations.
Greetings, sir. How are you?
I am doing all right, I guess. I mean, as well as anybody does during the plague times, but
Indeed. So, Jeremiah, I know who you are. I've known you for a very long time, but most likely most of the listeners here and those watching have no idea or have only heard rumblings of the man that is Jeremiah McCoy, also known as Basics of the Game on TikTok and Tech Noir on Twitter and other social media places. So perhaps give us your origin story. Who is Jeremiah McCoy? Where have you emerged from, and how long have you been on the scene and doing what you do?
I am originally from the Tennessee Valley. I grew up around Oak Ridge, Tennessee, but I moved around a lot too. And I have been around for time immemorial, I guess. It's actually kind of a fun joke to joke that I'm far older than I am. So I never really actually admit to how old I am. But yeah, I've been around for a while. I bounced around Tennessee for a while. Lived in Atlanta for a bit and moved out to North Carolina to work on a video game, which is where we work together, of course. And moved back to Tennessee after that sort of fell apart. Yeah, I've been back in the Oak Ridge area for a while. I am a part-time game writer for like D&D content. I am a TikToker, like you said. I've been in podcasting since the early days, making gaming related podcasts, YouTube. I just do a lot of different geeky things.
Awesome. No, that's great. And what, so like, I mean, your journey has basically been gaming in some way, shape, or form, right? I mean, like you have you grew up with gaming. I know you didn't really mention it there, but if I'm not mistaken, you have like a family heritage that's kind of rooted.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. My mom got me started in D&D in was it 81, 82? She bought me my first D&D set because she got tired of me getting into hers. She was playing with some old college buddies, and she kept coming home with the little sort of magenta colored box basic set. And it had this really evocative art from Errol Otis, and I just kept getting into it. And she got tired of me getting into it, so she bought me my own. She has long since quit playing because life got in the way for a while there, and she just never picked it back up. But yeah, it's a story we all know. Happens to a lot of people, but yeah, I kept playing. I mean, gaming has been my through line hobby my entire life. I did other things like sure. I've done IT work, and when I was younger, I worked in security. I've done factory work. I've done lots of other things, but there's always been that through line of gaming as the thing I'm passionate about. I grew up going to science fiction conventions. Mom did help run science fiction conventions, and so I spent a lot of time doing that when I was young, and that also sort of shaped me.
Yeah, it's in your roots.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, and though we worked together, you mentioned in North Carolina. Actually, I met you in another form of the role playing realms in the LARPing realm. So you're a long time LARPer as well. I know we don't always speak of
Yeah.
such things, but you know.
Uh, I can remember when uh, growing up, playing D&D was a thing that you got looked down on, right?
Mhm.
And then LARPers, it's almost like the D&D players could look down on
Yeah,
LARPers.
exactly. It was one of
Yeah.
you didn't even admit necessarily with your friends that play D&D, which now it's way more accepted. But
Yeah.
back then it was one of those things that, like, you do what? Like,
Yeah, but like I started, well, if you want to count the parlor LARPs, I think 93, 94.
okay,
Um,
about the
so
same time I was too, actually.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, we met at, what was it? What? There was a crossover from the LARP I was playing and a LARP you were playing, like Wildlands South.
Yeah, it was while in South and Euro at
Yeah,
the time. There was the crossover there. Yeah.
yeah. But it's also funny in that same group of crossovers. There's a guy who we both know who is now a game designer. I think last I heard he was working at Blizzard and was like a competitive Magic the Gathering player.
Well, I mean, yeah. Are you talking about you're talking about a guy who actually played a character named Blizzard
Yeah,
because he was such a fan. And then you mean Brian Kibler? Yeah,
yeah.
the Brian Kibler who yeah. Mm-hmm. It's true.
Yeah,
I used to drive him to LARPs before he had a driver's license, and
yeah, we
he
definitely had an
was
interesting
young and
crowd back
simple.
then.
Yeah.
Hmm?
But, yeah. He was still going to college. He was in college in Atlanta, and I was driving him to the LARPs. So, and he would dress
Yeah,
up like a white tiger and beat up people. But he has
yeah,
pictures of it. He still shows it. He's definitely he. What's great about him? He's such a character. He's not even embarrassed by the photos of him dressed up like a white tiger, in like in sweatpants. But yeah. But
yeah,
now he's LARPing again, and the dude is in super shape because he works out every day, and he shows his workouts on Twitch streams. So good for him. I wish I was working out every day. Took the pandemic to heart and decided to become a beast. So now he looks like Tyrion Lannister, not Tyrion.
Jamie.
Jamie Lannister, yeah.
Yeah, little different.
They're a little different there. Yeah, Jamie Lannister with the long hair and the beard and everything going on and looking like a badass. So good for you, Brian Gibbler.
Yeah.
So yeah. So this is I'll delve into another question. So this is a leadership podcast for the most part, like 90% of the time. But because I'm a big old geek and everything, I talk about gaming because that's been a huge part of my life. Like when I describe things, it's like I do leadership because I love leadership. The gaming part that's associated with it is just because it's also the other part of my life. But since it is a leadership podcast, I do have to ask questions about leadership because that makes sense, right? So the question here is, what do you consider in your experience? You've been through a lot of different jobs you described, work for different companies. You've been through different experiences where like leadership does come up, like in LARPing and so forth. What do you consider good leadership, right? Like we can talk about bad leadership all day long, but like art, I like to point to good leadership. So maybe you could describe, in your own words, what you consider good leadership for those that are listening.
I think that the best leadership is about communication, right? I mean, I think that the so many failings can be cleared up by just clear communication. Communicate what you want, and accept communication from people who work for you or work with you. And that means learning how to say things in an open way that is clear, to try and avoid um, letting your assumptions shape your conversations. That is, I think, the heart of good leadership is instead of, I mean, it happens all the time, right? We all sort of assume people know what we're talking about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's
Um,
a big one.
yeah, and some of that you have to do, right? Like you're working with a bunch of people, you sort of assume that they share some of the knowledge in the field that you're all working.
One would hope.
Yeah, one would hope. If you're at a primarily English speaking company, you assume all the other people in the company that you're talking to speak English. Things like that are, you can't avoid making some assumptions, but so often I've seen things get skewed in, everything from non-work sort of social projects to
Sure.
actual work that got messed up because people just assumed people were on the same page and they weren't.
As they say, when you make an assumption,
Yeah,
it's out of you and Uma Thurman. So, yeah.
I don't think that's the. I'm pretty sure that's not the saying. That's
Stuart Smalley said that. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is true, and it's something I actually bring up a lot. It's people aren't mind readers, right? Like when there's so many times, and I think you're touching on it great. It's like there's so many times, like in work or outside, like you think something. And I know this comes up in LARPing quite a bit. I've had this conversation with people that run LARPs all the time, where players are disappointed because something didn't happen in the game, and they're like, what didn't happen? And it's like, well, this thing that I thought in my head was going to happen. Did you tell anybody that you wanted this to happen? Well, no. Then why are you? Why it's the same thing where it's just like, man, I really want this position at work, right? And like, cool. Have you told anybody that you want this position at work? No. So you're just going to assume that, and I get it. Like a lot of people think that if you work really hard and you do everything right, that you're going to get the attention that you need. The thing is that like I tell people this all the time. We're not the center of everybody else's world. We're the center of our own world, right? So the amount that I think about you, Jeremiah, recently has been quite a bit because I've been preparing for this podcast.
Sure.
Usually, not so often, right? Like I think sometimes if there's like an idea that's attached to something that's important to me, I think about it. And it's the same thing at work, right? Like if you're working, the idea that someone's going to necessarily think of you and you haven't made people aware that you want something or whatever, and then when you get looked over and like you tell your boss, oh, but why didn't I get picked? Oh, well, I didn't know you wanted it, right? Now sometimes there are unfair things at work, right? Like where a position isn't even open to everybody and nobody even gets a chance, right? And so you totally get like looked over. But yeah, I agree. Like communication's huge. It's so huge. It's the most important thing for any relationship: work, life, love, friends, family, everything is communication. So I think you're 100% right. If at the core of if it's important for everything, it's definitely got to be at the core of leadership.
Yeah, I think if you're going to work on any skill for a workplace, in general, work on your communication skills first. Learn how to speak clearly. Learn how to write clearly. I mean, I'm not talking about be a grammar Nazi, but learn how to convey what you're thinking in writing. It's worth the time. It will get you much further than just assuming everybody understands what you're talking about.
100%. And don't use emoticons to communicate.
Ever.
Well, a little bit, but don't assume. Like that's again, don't use a sad face to communicate like that you're unhappy with a build that we just sent you. I might have gotten that once.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
Oh, sad face. What does that
mean? I occasionally,
words,
use your words. Don't communicate in non sequiturs. Yeah. Don't put tu chupacabra without any explanation, because we won't know what you're talking about.
That's true. All right. Well, cool. Favorite type of donut? Let's go through the hard questions here.
I mean, my classic favorite is, of course, Krispy Kreme, fresh made, glazed donut. That is the top of the pyramid, right? But beyond that, I really like going to a local donut place, probably more than I should, to be fair. Um,
What? Well, hey, pandemic times, man.
sure, sure.
We do what we do to get through. So,
Um,
but tell me more.
but
Tell me more of this local place and their special donuts.
yeah, it's called Donut Palace.
Okay.
It's in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, on the Oak Ridge Turnpike for those who are local to the area. And they have a drive-through,
Oh,
which is
see,
nice. Yeah,
pandemic safe ish.
yeah, 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 yeah. And they have a great variety, and they make all their donuts there. It's not a sort of a chain. They learned how to make donuts, and they make donuts. I love their twists, which are basically kind of like the same doughy consistency of the Krispy Kremes, but
Mm-hmm.
they're long twists.
Yeah,
Um,
this is good.
I like their white cream filled. It's kind of a vanilla cream filled. Those are nice, and I really love the old fashioned cake donuts that they make. They're really good.
Always a good classic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So another thing that is important to me, I talk about spirituality on occasion, mindfulness though, and so I'm curious, how do you find your Zen? How do you find mindfulness, especially with everything that's been going on in the last year or so, and I know times aren't easy for everybody. So how do you find some balance in the headspace?
Uh, I've had a hard time with it, like everybody. This past year, I think. Um, it's hard to turn down the noise in your head. And this year may have actually driven home that I probably have some form of ADHD on top of having depression. Um, but I think the ways I usually do it, if I'm particularly overwhelmed, I can just step outside for a little bit. Um, this is not going to be an option for everybody, but for me, I live in a smallish town in Tennessee. Um, I can step outside and see the mountains in the distance, smell fresh, air from an area filled with trees, and I can sit down and take a deep breath, and that's great. When I don't have that option, like the weather's bad or something like that, I like to I like to play a game that doesn't have a narrative. Um, something that I can just sort of lose myself in is sometimes helpful for me to just sort of release stress. So something like Minecraft, something like a card game, something that I can sort of do on automatic.
I get you.
Uh,
No, for me, Peggle and not in Rock Band back in the day, like
yeah,
because it's very like rhythmic. Well, Peggle's just my favorite. Like if I just want to zone out, it's mindless and it's yet incredible. But I get you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nothing with the narrative. If you have to pay attention to a story or make hard decisions, I get that's not helpful. So I get you.
but yeah, that's how I deal with it. And like I said, it's been hard this past year. Like
Hmm.
a lot of my usual coping mechanisms were not really doing it for me.
Or
Um,
available, probably.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I've had the advantage of being able to work from home.
Yeah.
But there are, which is interesting because I can tell you that there have been days when I was in a bad enough place mentally or a bad enough place physically that I probably would have called in if I had to go to an office. But because I'm working from home, I just roll into my office and do the job.
Grin and bear it, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's actually been I think a lot of people's problems, right? Is and they have the statistics on this. I think the people aren't using sick days as much this last year because again on a day where you would normally use a sick day because you were feeling unwell or whatever, if you don't have to see anybody, you just like you said, you just kind of go over to your desk and get in your chair and do the work, and that's probably not great in the long term. I think people do need to turn off and take the time out for work, whether it's for physical or mental, whatever the case is. And then
Yeah.
the other one that's a big one is, I have this problem is creating the day to day, right? So your old routine's kind of gone, right? So you would get up, get ready, drive to work, go into work, do all those little things. Now it's just like I walk upstairs, I come over to my desk, I sit down, and I work, and I get up to go get coffees occasionally, but like I don't take the breaks that I normally used to take. And then sometimes, unless I force myself and I'm paying attention, like I won't necessarily end the day when I normally would have ended the day, right? So like, I mean, it's great for my company, but not so great, not so great for me. And they're like, they're getting more hours out of me or whatever, and it's just like, and I never turn off anyway, so it's not that big of a difference. But I think it eats away at you a little bit, right? Like,
Yeah. And I definitely like the lack of routine definitely has affected my health this year.
mm,
Um, when I was working in the office, go to work,
mhm.
do my thing, um, eat at my desk, which is maybe not great, but
I do
whatever.
it too. I do it too. Yeah.
But on my lunch break, instead of going and eating, I would go for a walk.
Yeah.
Like they had a nice little fountain with a walking course around it, and I was like,
Awesome.
and so I would spend like half my lunch break just walking around the fountain, and it was good. It got me away from the thinking about stuff.
Mhm.
Whereas here, on my break, I'll either go eat lunch or I'll go take a nap.
Yeah. But I mean, I get it. It's there. It's convenient, and honestly, anything that's comfort at this point in time, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and yeah, it's not something to beat yourself up on. It's just something that's there. Honestly, if I didn't have somebody who literally would come grab me at lunchtime and make me go walk for 2 hours, which I don't like doing, but I do it because I have to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I go for a walk. But otherwise I wouldn't. But when I was, yeah, I get it. It's I'm glad I do it. I would rather do it maybe in the morning as like to fake the whole like work route to work thing, and then maybe do it in the evening to fake the route back home, right? So it's kind of like you could turn your head on, okay, I'm going to work, and then you could turn your head off, okay, I'm walking out of work. But
Yeah.
it's the middle of the day, so it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, naps are nice though. I can't complain there. All right, favorite. Okay, because you do video games and you do tabletop, so we're gonna hit both. So favorite system for tabletop.
Um, I'm going to be lying if I say D&D isn't.
Sure.
Um, just because it is, and I've said this for years. It's the lingua franca of the gaming world, right? I can put together a D&D game far easier than I can put together any other game, because everybody knows D&D. It's the game I started on. It's the game I've played the most of. It's the game I've written for. So D&D is going to be on that. And I say all of that because it feels like people should give a proviso for saying D&D these days. Like there are problems with D&D and they're trying to address them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're doing some huge
Um,
things that people like 2 years ago people wouldn't even be thinking about. So yeah.
well, sure. And they still have work to do.
Oh, sure.
Like nobody says they don't. But because of that, it feels like you should add a qualifier. Yeah, D&D is still my favorite game, despite its flaws.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Beyond D&D, because everybody plays D&D, I think the one I'm the most excited about lately has been the Age system by Green Ronin.
Okay.
Um, it started as
Tell me
a
more.
role-playing game based off of Dragon Age.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I bought that box, that little box. I remember.
Yeah, and they came up with a rule system to support Dragon Age.
Hmm.
And it was a decent system. And I'm not sure the full story of how they decided, you know what, we should just separate the system off. But
Probably
they
lost the
did.
rights. They probably lost the rights. Like,
Maybe. I know
I mean,
that.
I'm speculating here, but usually when stuff like that happens, it's because they lost the rights, but they like their system, and so they're like, you know what?
I know that Will Wheaton wanted to do a game, and he liked that system. He wanted to do a game on his YouTube channel, and he liked that system, but it wasn't going to be a Dragon Age game. So they used that. I don't know how much of that was he found out that they were releasing this separate or what. I don't know the routine on it. But they released it as Fantasy Age, which is excellent. And then they have a setting for it if you want to use it called Blue Rose, which started under some other system but got transferred over. And then they released Modern Age, which is the system that underpins the Expanse role-playing game, which is excellent. And a friend of ours, both of ours, is like the lead developer on it, Ian Lemke.
The Ian Lemke.
The Ian Lemke. Yes.
That's capital T, capital H, capital E. Ian Lemke.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a good system. And they are currently working on a playtest of an update to Fantasy Age. And from what I've seen of the playtest, it's not actually changing the core system. They're just adding some bits to make it more interesting, more usable. But Fantasy Age and Modern Age have been the ones that I've been the most excited about. But I love playing all of them. Like,
yeah, I'll have to check that out because I picked up that box set for Dragon Age a long time ago. And it was good. It was good. And then I didn't. I maybe they had a couple supplements, but I don't think many.
They released a fair amount, and in and when Dragon Age Inquisition came out, they released like a big, thick book using the art from Dragon Age Inquisition, the tarot cards.
Yeah,
it's got that on the cover, and it was a much more realized version, and you can still buy it. So that's why I'm like, I'm not sure if they lost the license.
Yeah, no, that. Now now I'm gonna go look it up and buy more things that I don't need right this moment. So.
Yeah, but Fantasy Age is excellent. And if I were running a fantasy game and I was like, all right, I don't want to use D&D, it's probably where I would start.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Very nice. Cool. What about? Well, you covered two questions there for me because I was going to follow up with what would be your secondary system, but that's it right there. What about from video game standpoint? Console, PC, Master Race, supposedly.
I'm mainly a PC gamer. I've played a little bit of PlayStation stuff, but mainly PC.
Okay.
And yeah.
Favorite game on PC?
Well, I'm a nerd for BioWare, so all of the Mass Effect, all of the Dragon Age games are.
There's a connection there.
Yeah. I've got nearly 1,000 hours in Dragon Age Inquisition alone.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I may have a problem.
I played it twice, but I don't think I have 1,000 hours in there. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the nature of their game design is that they encourage you to play through it multiple times so that you get different story results. And yeah, you could go on YouTube and watch all of the different endings, but it's much more fun to play it. And they're coming out with a new Mass Effect refresh where they're redoing all the graphics. I'm going to buy that. I'm going to play that, even though I've got almost as much time into Mass Effect.
I'm picking it up too. I think it's the end of May. I think it comes out.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to it.
Player, sadly, but that's okay. I mean, it's hard to. You can't do everything.
Yeah, no, you can't either. And honestly, I think a lot of game companies have gotten gun shy about multiplayer because of the rather public disappointments with some multiplayer.
But these are multiplayers that are already awesome. They just couldn't bring them over, I think, with
Yeah, yeah,
everything else they were doing. They had to make some concessions, I guess, to upgrade everything and then have
sure.
it running.
But yeah, I think beyond that, the one I've spent the most time on recently has been Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah.
I have completed 2 full playthroughs on that, and I started a third because
Because
I
why not?
think
So you're doing all the different backgrounds, or is the third one a double up on one of the other backgrounds?
no, it's doing all the backgrounds. So I've completed Nomad and Corp, and I started a Street Kid, and um, the failings of that game are rather public. Everybody's heard about them. Um, but I think it buries a lot of the really brilliant design work that went into it. It feels like a very living place when you're playing it. Um,
Sure.
and the stories are interesting and compelling. And yeah, I was already a nerd for cyberpunk um, games. You know, I played Cyberpunk 2020 back in the 90s, like everybody else. I
Other
played.
than those crazy kids that were born in the '90s, but yeah. Everybody else.
Well, yeah, but Shadowrun is one of my all-time favorite games.
Same here.
Just I love those settings.
Hmm.
Like the rule systems, I was like, they're all right, or sometimes not all right in some of the editions of Shadowrun. But I loved those settings. I love those kinds of stories. So yeah, I was on board.
Very cool. So you born into the world of geekdom and D&D. You've worked in video games. You play video games. You play D&D. And nowadays, in the world of social media, there are all these things going on, the Twitters and the Facebooks, and now the TikToks. And for my limited understanding, but actually not that limited because I've been following you for a while. You've become quite quite a little bit of the sensation in the TikToks as basics of the game. Tell us a little bit about like how you got started there, what you're doing there. I mean, how many times you're on there, and what's so exciting about it?
When so back in 2019, I started seeing people share D&D related TikToks on Twitter, and um, some of them were people I knew from like YouTube stuff, like Momo O'Brien and Azrai, who at the time was known as LARP House on YouTube. Um, and a few others, and I was like, these are really interesting. So I finally broke down and got TikTok app. I had heard about it. I follow the tech world, among other things. I work in technology, so I follow tech news, and TikTok kept coming up, and I was like, I don't know, it's not. It's probably just for kids, right? And I kept seeing these, and I was like, all right, I'll install it and see what I think. And I started going through it. Um, and I think one thing that helped my experience early on that not many people probably think of to do early on is I immediately started searching for hashtags that I was interested in. So like D&D, Dungeons and Dragons,
Okay.
LARPing, and then followed those hashtags because it gives you the option, follow them.
Mm-hmm.
So then my For You page was nothing but this stuff. Well, it was less stuff that I wasn't interested in. It's not completely.
Yeah, it's very I find it difficult to prune. It's not like my Spotify list, right? My Spotify list knows my music. It makes beautiful suggestions to me every day. I have multiple channels that have learned me. They know me. TikTok is a fickle beast. And I find that though I get a number of D&D related or role playing related stuff and kung fu and some other crazy stuff that pops up there, the sheer number of other things that are much more common than TikTok still pop up on the regular there. So I do wish
Yeah.
their algorithm would tone it down just a little bit. But I get it. But I agree. Once you find the things that you're looking for, there's some really interesting tidbits there, and you being one of them. So
Yeah.
maybe tell it like, so you got there, you found that stuff, and so what made you actually start, besides following it, start actually making your own, right? Because that's the second step, right? First
Right.
step is admitting you have a problem. No, first step is finding the content that you want and the things that you resonate with, and then what makes you go, you know what, the world needs 15 seconds to 30 seconds of Jeremiah McCoy talking about D&D and ranting a little bit sometimes of the people that exist on the internet. What took you to that level?
There were a couple of things. The first one was I kept seeing videos of younger people, often women or people of color, who were giving the horror stories. And I've heard the horror stories before being on TikTok, but I'm seeing people talking about it on TikTok of the gatekeepers, the people who essentially look like me, telling them that they don't belong. And that really kind of irritated me because I I hate the gatekeepers who do that. I hate them with a passion. I want more people. I want new people. I'm excited by new people. Um, so that was like, okay, maybe I should make something. And I had that in the back of my head, and I didn't know what I was going to make. And then while I was watching, I also saw that there were a lot of people making content about bards and paladins, but not a lot of people making content about wizards. And
Which is great. I mean, yeah, I get it. Yeah, the paladins. Well, actually, I don't get paladins, but whatever. But the
yeah,
bards, maybe I get that. There's a couple of people I follow that are bards, and they do their thing, and they're great.
yeah,
Wizards,
but
they're cool.
and I was like, well, it's a visual medium.
Mm.
I look like a wizard.
Yeah.
Long hair, bearded. I look like a wizard. Okay, gray hair, to be clear. Um, and I was like, okay, this is something. And I'm a fan of wizards in D&D and lore, you know. So I had opinions. So I was like, all right, first I'll make some wizard jokey things, and people like them. Like they're like, okay, this is neat, you know. I did a whole bit about uh, necromancers, where it was like, oh, yes, I understand you think necromancers are evil, but really they just want to raise a family. And, you know, people got that and they laughed. You know, they thought that was great. And I started getting that, and then I would see videos from people saying that again that they were getting harassed for their opinions about D&D, and I started commenting on that, and slowly I developed an audience based off of either me being silly about wizards or the fact that I've been around forever, by their comparison at any rate.
Sure. Yeah.
And they're like, you know, what about this? I've heard this, and I can go get the source, right?
Yeah, which is awesome. Yep.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, I've got the original box set back here. It's fine. Here, let me tell you what it says. And yes, I did play back in first edition, and yes, that was different back then. And this is where that idea comes from. And no, it's no longer valid in the game, or you know. And I became the friendly D&D uncle, and
the not creepy one. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not the creepy kind. Like, and I sort of cut out my niche as the guy who talks about D&D and other games.
Yeah.
To be fair, I do talk about other games, and also being willing to talk about social issues.
which is
which,
awesome.
I mean,
Well,
more
not awesome
people,
that we have to talk about them, but I think it's awesome that you do,
yeah,
and I do appreciate your stance against people, and I love that people for whatever reason feel like they want to get into the arena with you, and get into your comments and say things, and I am impressed that you take them to town, even when they do.
people,
I followed your responses on a couple of them, and they've been interesting. Where like somebody's like, "Oh, but," and you're like, "No," and then they're like, "But what about it?" Like, "No," like still no, like. Yeah, if anybody ever gets a chance, if not to just watch some of the amazingness of Jeremiah on Basics of the Game on TikTok, but then after he does one of these statements, then follow along in the comment section, because it is a ride in and of itself, I must say, and I feel like some of your audience are obviously good natured folks, and some of them are obviously masochists that just want to get beat up, because like I don't see I mean, it's the internet, so obviously these people, that's their joy. They get attention somehow, right? And I guess it's cheaper than some of the other ways they can get abused, because it's free. But yeah.
yeah, I mean, part of that is, uh, allyship doesn't mean anything if you're not willing to up and talk,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm an ally, but you never say anything. You never like make
Yeah.
the people you're being an ally to feel like they're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
Is less useful. That said, I understand it is a lot of emotional labor to get into that fight.
Mm-hmm.
It is, but I thought it was worth doing. The other thing is, I have the advantage of being, without being egotistical, somewhat eloquent
Mm-hmm.
and well spoken.
Yeah. And it sound nice.
Yeah, I have a nice voice, and so I allow myself to use that as a weapon sometimes when I have to.
Yeah, it's a good one. But better than a lot of weapons out there, so that's for sure. So
Yeah,
So you've been doing a lot of besides a lot of really, like I said, well spoken and well said topics and so forth. You also you do some duets and some other things. So what's been like some of the more fun things? I guess that could be fun too, but maybe the more entertaining for yourself things that you've done maybe recently, or like overall, and since the time you've been on TikTok.
I love. So I'm not very good at cosplay, and cosplay is a lot of D&D TikTok. Um, I
But wait,
like.
what do we mean by like? I mean, are you just talking about like going hardcore into like because all the cosplayers that have like their Spider-Man and like Spider-Gwen suits that pop in and do stuff, like that's kind of unfair because that's like their professional cosplay.
Sure, no,
Or do you mean just putting on your LARPing garb? You don't even like doing
yeah,
that.
yeah. Like I'm not as good at, the garb and the makeup
Oh, okay.
as some of the people on D&D TikTok who do cosplays. A lot of them do cosplays of Critical Role characters and so on.
Okay.
Every once in a while, somebody will do something. And I was like, I could play off that.
Mhm.
I try and avoid the ones where it's like the creepy romantic stuff because
Yeah, because you don't want to be creepy uncle.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
But
It's fine.
comedic stuff. I have. I think one of my favorite recent ones is I did uh, a bit from the Court Jester. So that for those who are not familiar with how TikTok works on the audio side of things and the cosplay things, people will load up audios from movies and TV shows and recontextualize them using that audio with their own characters. And I've done one from the Court Jester, where I played the Danny Kaye character and somebody else playing off of somebody else's uh, doing other lines of the whole the vessel with the pestle routine. That one was great fun. I did another one where I like using the doctor voices from Doctor Who, because that sort of aligns with wizards. And when I do the cosplay thing, I do wizards. So I will do a
There's that, and there's the familiarity too, right? Like a
sure.
lot of people that play D&D like Doctor Who, so it's not too bad.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I've done some that. Um, the those are fun.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the most fun one I did uh, is not me duetting someone else. It's me creating something for somebody else to duet off of. Because you goes either way. Like you see one, and you're like, I can make a duet, and your video is next to somebody else's video, and you're both playing off the same audio. I created one where it was based off of an old Bugs Bunny Daffy Duck routine, and I was the Daffy Duck,
Okay.
and it was so much fun to use that audio. And it's aha pronoun trouble, and it's
Okay.
this back and forth, the classic back and forth where Elmer Fudd shoots
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Daffy Duck, and Daffy
Duck
Duck is
season,
like, no,
rabbit
wait,
season, duck
yeah,
season, wabbit season, wabbit season, duck season.
right,
All right.
and Daffy Duck pauses it and is like, okay, how did this happen? And he does this whole routine and goes, aha, pronoun trouble. That's it.
Mm,
And I used that audio, and it was so much fun to get just super animated and just play with it in
sure.
full wizard garb, mind you. Like
Okay.
I'm dressed like a wizard
Excellent.
doing.
Hey, you even so speaking of that, dressed as like a wizard, you actually had a fan make you like a whole wizard kit, right? Like a
Oh
hat and
yeah,
wand and everything, right?
the Wayfaring Wizard
Mm-hmm.
guy made it for me. He made me a wand, which was nice. It was a very nice wand. It had a little symbol on the bottom. And he made me a hat, and I had this big, giant, wizardly hat with a little
Mm-hmm.
drooping thing on the back, and
Very wizardly. Yeah.
very wizardly. And he made me a like a leather embossed book,
Yeah.
and that that made my month. Like I was
We're
like,
talking about it now, and I can see the smile on your face. So
yeah,
yeah, obviously it's still making your day. So
oh yeah,
well worth it. Yeah, no, and I think that's that's the social part. I mean, not the gifts. The gifts are cool, but I mean, like, right? We're talking about community. We talk about social media and everything like that. This is like the heart of it, right? Is where you really connect with an audience, and the audience connects with you, and through the things you're doing, you're bringing entertainment or joy or social awareness or consciousness or whatever the case might be, right? Like you're tapping into your audience, and so like that's super awesome to see because I've known you for a super long time, and I know what an awesome human being you are, and it's great to see that you found an outlet for other people to kind of like see that too, right? And like you said, you get to be the uncle wizard for so many other people, right? And I bet the number of people that you were able to help and touch before was good because you've always been a good friend. I know that, and seeing that now there's all these people who you can call them acquaintances, you call them whatever you want, but still you're able to help them out and do things for them that without this technology that we have today and out this platforms that we have today we wouldn't have otherwise. So I think that's awesome, right?
yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that resonates with people is that I'm open with my own struggles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it helps, I think, for some people that are like, okay, he also struggles with depression. Um, you know, the fact that I'm open about the fact that I'm bisexual was, you know, I had lots of people message me or like, say, hey, it's good to see that I don't have to fit into a particular
Mm-hmm.
image. That you can get to a gray haired old guy and keep your identity safe and secure and be open.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think a lot of people need to hear that and need to be exposed to that. So thank you for being one of those voices.
Mm.
The so speaking of like, if somebody was wanting to get into TikTok right now. I mean, you touched on it a little bit all over the place, right? Like you found it through people who were doing YouTube, through via Twitter, right? So other social medias that you were already at. But you know, TikTok's still growing. It's still people are finding their audience and finding their tribe and everything else there. What would you suggest to someone who is listening to this and is like, hey, I've got things to say. Maybe not about D&D, but other stuff. What if they wanted to try TikTok? What would you suggest that they do?
Learn the tools. There are a lot of tools built into TikTok. You can look at your own analytics and tell when you've had a good week and when you haven't. You've got different effects that you can apply to your video. You can edit your video. You can add music. They put it in the app. You can learn how to do that. Learn how to do captioning, whether it's within the app, i.e. typing it in yourself, or using a third-party tool like Threads by Instagram. But captioning helps people who are maybe a little bit hearing impaired to be able to translate what's going on. So that's also useful. It expands your audience quite a bit. Figure out what you want to talk about. Don't just chase the trend. Don't just do what everybody else is doing, because everybody else is doing it. And there may be people who are doing it better than you because they've been doing it longer. Instead, figure out what you want to do, what your thing is, what you want to talk about, what you want to demonstrate, and then go into it and throw yourself at that. Once you've done it for a while, the other big thing is if you don't have to worry about numbers, don't. I joined the Creator Fund last year, towards the end of last year, and I don't make much money off of it. Maybe a dinner a month, or maybe if on a good month, a new game book. But I don't make much money off of it. During the pandemic, a lot of people lost their jobs, and they fell back on the money that they could get from the Creator Fund as a means to pay their rent. Those people, I understand why they have to stress about the changes in the algorithm, because the algorithm changes all the time. Your viewership will go up and down big time. It is normal. But if you're making your primary income off of that, that's a problem.
That's scary.
Yeah.
Unpredictability is not fun, especially when it comes to money and your livelihood.
Yeah. So have a different means of income is definitely high up on there, so that you don't have to stress about those numbers quite so much.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I think the most recent payout was 1/5 of my previous. Yeah. So,
but your numbers were higher, probably, right? In a way.
No.
Okay, I thought maybe also it was like your numbers had gone up, but like just because of the way things had shaped up. Because I've heard that before, where people things are getting better, but for whatever reason, because they're changing the way payouts work and this and that.
I don't want to get too far in the weeds for you, but what happens is that the algorithm is based off of the fact that the videos are a minute or less. So the engagement is easier to track.
Sure.
And they're constantly tweaking the algorithm to sort of determine what they're going to show you.
Of course.
So what you end up with is a rapidly changing environment, where what was giving you lots of views last month gets you nothing this month. And
as far as like the type of content you're making.
Yeah. Okay. Like the same content can give you wildly different when the algorithm changes. Add into that, there are some moderation issues on the app. Like, moderation's hard. It's super hard. I mean, Facebook and Twitter and YouTube all have teams of people for human moderation, and they have to cycle them out all the time because it will burn them out. They see the things that on the internet that you don't want to see. They're the folks who go through and remove all that stuff that you don't get to see because it's so terrible.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
And so that will burn through people really fast.
Sure.
So human moderation's hard. So they try and rely on algorithms to do it. And the algorithms give you all kinds of false positives. And then on top of that, trolls will use reporting systems to remove perfectly reasonable stuff.
Sure. And then it's down for long enough that whatever gains you would have made is too late, right?
Yeah. Right. So there's a whole sort of technical background to what's going on. What the experience is I'm making content that people liked, and now they're not even seeing it because the app isn't showing them anymore.
True. Yeah, because a lot of times, I mean, I know it's probably, I'm assuming it's the same on TikTok as, I know it is for YouTube, is most of your discoverability actually doesn't come from your followers. It's actually like new people, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, if what you were doing before that was getting shown to new people doesn't work anymore to show new people, then yeah, you're stuck with your followers like me, just like other stuff. But,
yeah. And like I crossed a milestone last night of 500,000 likes.
What? 500,000? Yeah. That's huge, actually. I mean that it might be that's huge. 500,000. I can't even think about it. That's 500,000 people. I think I'm only responsible for like 100 of those. So
the weird thing is, like there are people on the app who have 1 million or more followers, like 2 million. I'm at around 34,000.
Yeah. So that speaks volumes, right? If you're just percentage wise assuming that all those were only coming from your followers, but I'm assuming they're not. Still, that's great. So yeah, great numbers, man. Congratulations.
But yeah, and you end up with people like Hank Green, who, for those who don't know, popular author, YouTuber, like he was already popular before he got on TikTok. He didn't need the money from TikTok, so he contributed all his money to a charity.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and he posted the numbers recently, and he's got millions of followers and lots of engagement. Over the past like 8 months, he's given $35,000 to that charity.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So if you get a big following, like a huge following, you can live off of it. But yeah, most people are somewhere in the middle. It helps them a little. But if you can avoid having to worry about it and just enjoy the process, which is where I'm at, like I just enjoy my interactions, then it can be a fun thing. Getting into social media to make money is harder.
Yeah, I mean, expectations are there, right? Anytime you have expectations,
yeah,
you're going to get some disappointment.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jeremiah. It's just a couple questions. How can people find you? Like if somebody was looking for the Jeremiah McCoy, where could they find you?
Well, I have a website, jeremiahmccoy.com. Oh. I got that a while back because I figured, why not? Where I actually do some writing about games and stuff. And it's a good sort of central point to find a bunch of my things. I am on Twitter as Tech Noir. I've been on there for forever. And on TikTok and Twitch, I am Basics of the Game. And I actually do have a YouTube channel I haven't added much to in a while. If you search for Jeremiah McCoy on YouTube, you will find me there.
Excellent. That's so great. Well, thank you so much again for taking the time to chat with me and my wonderful press starters here at the Press Start Leadership Podcast. And hopefully we'll chat again. Maybe once you hit 2 million. I don't want to say 1 million because I think you're gonna hit that faster than I say it. But maybe when you hit 2 million, 2 million likes, we'll get you back on and see how the life of the the wizardly uncle is doing. So,
I would be glad to anytime.
all right, excellent. All right, thanks again. Appreciate it, Jeremiah.
Sure.